The impact of the fighting in Syria and the crisis in Kobani on Syria's neighbour Turkey was made brutally apparent when the country woke to scenes that many thought had been consigned to history. Tanks on the streets of southeastern cities, curfews imposed, people burning the Turkish flag, and monuments to Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, the founder of the modern nation. Many Kurds, despite Ankara's vociferous denials, accused Turkey of, at the very least, favouring ISIS in its battle with the Kurdish fighters who are loosely affiliated with the PKK, the outlawed Kurdish organisation that has been battling the Turkish state for 3 decades. Those scenes saw not just pitched battles between Kurdish militants and the police, but battles between Kurdish militants supporting the fighters of Kobani and Islamist Kurds in the streets of the city of Diyarbakir, in which at least 8 people died.
The situation in Kobani is very serious, and in some ways it's the biggest test of whether the US-led coalition is really going to be able to bear down on ISIS. Kobani is strategically important because if ISIS is able to take control of it, then it will have a significant foothold across a large chunk of the Turkey-Syria border. And of course it would be an important psychological victory for ISIL because they would be able to show that they are taking significant gains even though this US-led operation is happening. In the last few days there have been much stronger US airstrikes against ISIL forces on the ground, but they appear to have had fairly limited effect. And they've thrown a spotlight, if you like, on the thing that many people have been saying is a weakness in the US campaign, which is that unless you have people on the ground, you are really not going to be able to accurately pinpoint ISIL targets. So it's created a lot of concerns about that, but it's also raised a lot of concerns about the role that Turkey has, the rather ambivalent role that Turkey has in this coalition.
In a certain sense, Turkey has a dilemma which few other countries endure. It is damned if it does and damned if it doesn't. Its argument has been that if it takes more active actions against ISIS, it not only would strengthen the PYD, the Kurdish group affiliated with the PKK, in its Syrian redoubts, but it would also open itself up to retaliation to ISIS in a way to which few countries in the US-led coalition are vulnerable. Turkey not only has a 900-kilometre border with Syria, it also is an established crossing point for jihadis and has a large tourism industry which could be vulnerable to attack.
The situation between Turkey and the US has been fraught for quite a long time. And what is happening now is that although Turkey has said that it is prepared to join the US-led coalition against ISIS, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan is really a very ambivalent player in all this. He's begun to do some positive things. He's begun to close the border between Turkey and Syria to stop foreign fighters coming down from Europe through Turkey and into Syria, which is a good thing, and he's formally joined this coalition. But he's given a lot of conditions. He set out a lot of conditions for Turkey's full participation in the operation against ISIS. He is insisting that the operation needs to be widened to take on the Assad regime in Damascus. That's still Turkey's main concern. And the US doesn't see it that way. It doesn't feel that this operation can be widened to that at the moment. It regards ISIS as more important. And of course, Turkey is also very hostile to anything that will allow the Kurds, the Syrian Kurds on its border, to set up any kind of control in Kobani and deepen their position because of the historic difficulties between the Turks and the Kurds. The argument that the US is making is, look, you may have those concerns, but frankly, ISIS is a much, much bigger worry for you and for the rest of the region.
When it comes to committing ground troops, Turkey wonders why it, alone of all countries, should have to do so. Why it, alone of all countries, should be enmarred in a Middle Eastern war from which it is unable, by reasons of geography, to extricate itself when the interests of others may wane. And when it comes to supply for the Kurdish fighters, the Turks remind people that the Kurdish fighters are themselves allied with the PKK, an organisation that is classified as terrorist, not just by Turkey itself, but by the US and the EU as well.
I think it's very difficult for the US and its allies to turn around to the Turks and say, you've got to put lots of ground troops into Syria to take on ISIS. I think that would be very hard for the West to argue because, after all, the Americans, the British and others are not putting their own ground troops in. They're resistant to doing that. So they can't really make that argument. But there are a number of things the Turks could do. They could make the Incirlik air base in southern Turkey available to the US so that it could fly operations from there. They could also allow attack helicopters to operate from Turkish territory, which is important because I think it's accepted that you need a more low-flying operation to get the precision that you need. So they could do that as well. That's the kind of thing which the Turks ought to be considering doing as far as the US is concerned. But thus far, the Erdogan administration is being very, very resistant to that.